in our short amount of time. So with that, we thought it would be helpful to start with some definitions so that we're all on the same page, even though I'm sure that most of you have your own definition and have heard of some of these definitions, but we wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. So diversity is any dimension used to differentiate groups of people from one another. So if you had a group of all white males, there's still going to be diversity within that group. And we want to make sure people understand diversity isn't just about race or gender or ethnicity, etc. How does inclusion differ from diversity? Often people talk about diversity is being asked to the party and inclusion is being to the dance, and inclusion is being asked to dance. But we use this definition that inclusion ensures everyone feels welcome and their differences aren't just acknowledged, but they're valued and not diminished. And then we thought it would be important for you to understand intersectionality, especially as we start talking more about Jews who are of color and all that's going on in our world today. The concept was really introduced not long ago by Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, and it talks about the complex ways each of us holds marginal group affiliations at the same time. And so, for example, I'm a woman, I'm Jewish, I have a disability. You could have multiple elements of identities, and when these combine or overlap or intersect in a person or a group, resulting in multiple interdependent systems of discrimination or oppression, we call that intersectionality. So we don't always talk about intersectionality except as it applies to groups that have experienced oppression. When we talk about equity, we want to make the distinction between what is the difference between equality and equity, because most of us grew up with the notion that being treated equally was really the way to go. So I point you to this little illustration of the three young people. The first one in the first image, it's assumed that everyone will benefit from the same supports. They're all looking over this fence to watch a ball game. And they're being treated equally. But as you can see, the smallest person can't see over the fence. So even though they're given equal treatment, it doesn't always help. In the second illustration, individuals are given different supports to make it possible for them to have equal access to the game. And so they're being treated equitably. And that's typically our goal when we do work in this field. The third image, though, is really our aspiration, and that is to remove systemic barriers. And so what you can see here is that the fence was removed. And there are so many instances in our world, in everything that we do, much more than one would imagine, where there are systemic barriers that keep people from having full access. So those are the basic definitions. And I can move my slide forward. We're going to start, because we don't have the time and luxury to have all 40 something of us introduce ourselves in the larger group. What we're going to do is put you into breakout rooms, and in the smaller breakout rooms, there's going to be 4 of them. So a little over 10 people in each breakout room. You're going to only address one question. So the first group, if you're in breakout room number 1, you'll answer question number 1. If you're in breakout group number 2, you'll answer question 2, and so forth. So what I would ask is, if you can, if you have your phone handy, take a photo of this slide, because the slides won't show. We can put it in the chat, but the chats disappear when you go into your breakout rooms. And you're going to have
actually, if you send me the link, if you have this that you can copy into the chat, then we can send it to the breakout rooms.
I will do that right now.
Okay. After you say the brilliant thing that you were about to say that I
already done it into the chat. Oh, good. So you can go ahead and copy it from there.
Got it. Thank you.
And I just sent it to you. So you'll have about 8 minutes to discuss the one question. What we would like you to do is encourage everyone to weigh in who wants to. We don't want to pressure people to participate if they don't want to, but we would love to hear from as many of you as possible. And we're going to come back together. One person from each group is going to summarize key takeaways from your discussion when we come back together in 8 minutes. So if everyone's ready, head to your rooms. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, can we hear someone from group number 1? Just a brief response to when did you experience bias and what was the impact on you? Just a quick 1-minute Twitter version summary.
Okay, well, let's see. So we heard from, I won't name names to privacy, but someone had shared that they grew up in an evangelical church, and when they left, they experienced feeling, well, expelled or shunned, and described the feeling of what it's like to be on the receiving end of orthodoxy and bias. And someone else had shared about growing up in South Africa and speaking German predominantly and feeling very much shut out of a clique at a boarding school. And it left them feeling internally empowered not to participate or to see what apartheid was about and to leave. So there was a way that she felt strengthened by the experience of bias.
Great, thank you so much. So we'll applaud at the end for everyone. How about group number 2? Do we have a spokesperson who can summarize real quickly?
It's kind of a quiet group, but I would say that trying to understand the other is always a challenge. And for me, the trick is remembering that they are people too, and that they're doing the best they can.
We also talked about how it's really hard because we're living in a kind of insulated or insular world here in the North Bay, and especially with COVID, and that there's a hope to try to burst our bubble as we open up in this new post-COVID world.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, group number 3, how do you build relationships with others who are from a different background? Anyone in group number 3? Summarize. Give it.
I will do it. If we talked about that in our professions, we've been fortunate enough to be exposed to many people from different backgrounds, but that, as Lisa was saying, because we live in sort of an area that isn't so diverse in a lot of ways, it's hard to make those connections. One thing we talked about a little bit was social media as being a great leveler, that, you know, while we might not geographically have access to a lot of people from different cultures or different walks of life, we can join groups, or we can reach out and learn things online, as we have been doing all year, and make connections that way.
Yep. Great, thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, group number 4? Was that group number 3? That was group number 3, right? Group number 4. Anybody want to read out from group number 4? How do you make sure others feel welcome, psychologically safe, a sense of belonging? Anyone? Okay, if not, we're going to move on to group number, we're going to move on, actually. So I'm going to share my screen again. And turn it over to Rabbi Kramer.
Beautiful. So you might be wondering, why in the world did we want to teach about this subject tonight? But I see a direct connection, because tonight we're celebrating receiving the Torah on the bottom of Mount Sinai. And in our text, we learn that all people stood at Sinai and received that text. The generation that was there and generations yet to be, and people from all different walks of life. And I really think that this is one of the great equalizers of the Torah, really stating very clearly diversity, inclusivity, equity, and belonging. And that's really how I see this, as a Jewish imperative that's built into this text, as well as a slew of other texts, more texts than we could possibly go over tonight. So I'm just going to highlight a few texts on the reasoning behind why I think this is such a Jewish value and built into the DNA of Judaism. So one comes from Isaiah. It says, "For my house shall be a house of prayer for all people." All people being the key phrase there. Then again, we have from Bereshit, the beginning of Genesis. "And God said, let us make humans in our image, after our likeness. And God created humans in God's image. In the image of God, God created them. Male and female, God created them." And if this is not a lesson of inclusivity, I don't know what is. If we can all be in the image of God, then we would all be on equal ground, really, and treating each other in an equitable fashion. "You shall not insult the deaf or place a stumbling block before the blind." And this is really an imperative for action, right? This is what we're being told to do. We're being told to not only not be mean to people, but to make sure that there are not stumbling blocks in front of people who can't see them. We're being asked to go out of our way to make sure that we are providing an inclusive environment. And this verse is not just talking about people who can't see and who can't hear. This is really just a starting point to jump off from, and to make sure that we're being inclusive, especially in our physical ways, and also in all of our spiritual and other ways for people. And then another text, "Every member of the people of Israel is obligated to study Torah, whether one is rich or poor, physically able or physically disabled." And this comes from Maimonides, but what a lesson to all of us, that if everyone is obligated, no matter their means or their walks of life, and if we can take this lesson, broaden it, bring it out into the 21st century, and really infuse it in every bit of what we do, we would have a different world. And so that's what it's all about. So now we are going to go through an exercise, and I'm going to ask you to try very quickly to find something nearby and write the word yes on it. If you have a piece of paper and you can write the word yes. If you can't write the word yes, and you just have something nearby and you just want to hold up your cell phone and say that it's going to be your yes symbol, we can just choose to make something very quickly a yes symbol, or if you have a yes. I'm going to quickly ask a series of questions, and we're going to take down the slide just so that we can see everyone and your answers. And we're just going to go through a series of questions and just notice what your answer is. So you're going to hold up your yes sign or your object for yes. Okay. And this is going to be a lightning round because we're already behind time. So first question: English is your first language? I see lots of yeses. Either of your parents graduated from college? A lot of yeses still. You and your family have always had health insurance? Work and school holidays coincided with religious holidays that you celebrate? Wow, and really notice that. You studied the culture or history of your ancestors in elementary school. You have been bullied or made fun of based on something you cannot change. You took out loans for your education. You were stopped or questioned by the police because they thought you were suspicious. Who here has ever been stopped or questioned by the police? Not because you were doing something wrong like speeding, but because you were suspicious. Okay. You were uncomfortable about a joke or statement you overheard related to race, ethnicity, gender, appearance, or sexual identity, but you felt unsafe or uncomfortable in the situation. Okay. You have been called a derogatory name sometime in your life.
You've been told you're an exception to the group in which you identify, your race, your gender, your religion, your economic status. You're the exception. You wanted to, but didn't stand up for others when you knew what was happening to them or being said about them was wrong. You had the talk with your child or children about how to stay safe due to other people's hatred of groups in which you identify or in which they identify. You've been turned away from a restaurant, an event, a country club for no apparent reason that you're aware of. You've used your areas of privilege to support others who have less of a voice than you. Thank you. So we ask these questions because it's important for us to understand where we have privilege. There are so many areas where some of us have privilege, and we often think of it as, oh, that person has privilege means that they're totally happy and successful financially and in every other way. But in reality, there are so many areas in which we have privilege, and those are the areas where we are best suited to become an ally to those who don't have privilege in that area. So it's interesting to note, and if we were in person, we could do other exercises around this, but at least we get a sense of who we are and what distinguishes us and what issues and challenges we have gone through and what issues and challenges others around us have gone through and have confronted. So with that, I'm going to share again and we'll move forward. What I'd like to share with you is how to be a good ally. This is a very brief video, but I think it says it all.
Hey friends, so I'm trying something different with my setup and I don't know if it's working, but you will deal. Imagine your friend is building a house and they ask you to help, but you've never built a house before. So it'd probably be a good idea for you to put on some protective gear and listen to the person in charge. Otherwise, someone's gonna get seriously hurt. Look, I'm helping! It's the exact same idea when it comes to being an ally. An ally is a person that wants to fight for the equality of a marginalized group that they're not a part of. We need your help building this house, but you probably should listen so you know what to do first. Let's do this. So here are my 5 tips for being a good ally. Understand your privilege. Now, a lot of people get hung up on the word privilege, so let me break it down for you nice and easy. Privilege does not mean that you are rich, that you've had an easy life, that everything's been handed to you and you've never had to struggle or work hard. All it means is that there are some things in life that you will not experience or ever have to think about just because of who you are. It's kind of like those horses that have those blinders on. They can see just fine. There's just a whole bunch of stuff on the side that they don't even know exists. So for example, there are currently 29 states where you can legally be fired for being gay, and there are 34 states where you can legally be fired for being trans. Now, as a straight cis woman, those are things that I don't have to ever think about if I don't want to. I'm not going to be fired because I'm straight, and I'm not going to be fired because I'm cis. So it makes sense that before I can fight for the rights of others, I have to understand what rights I have and others don't. That's privilege. Listen and do your homework. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not possible for you to learn if you aren't willing to listen. So you got to know when to zip up the lip up. I don't know. You get what I mean. But that's the thing that's so cool about social media. There are so many people sharing their stories all around the world and connecting with people that they normally would never get a chance to without the power of the internet. So do your homework. Start reading blogs, tweets, news articles, and stories so that you can get caught up on the issues that are important to the communities that you want to support. Speak up, but not over. If the Fight for Equality was a girl group, the ally wouldn't be the lead singer or the second lead singer. They'd be Michelle. An ally's job is to support. You want to make sure that you use your privilege and your voice to educate others, but make sure to do it in such a way that does not speak over the community members that you're trying to support or take credit for things that they are already saying. This isn't Mario Kart. Stay in your lane. Realize that you're going to make mistakes and apologize when you do. Nobody's perfect. Unlearning problematic things takes time and work, so you are bound to mess up and trip and fall. But don't worry, you can brush yourself off and get right back up. And back up! Just remember that it's not about your intent, it's about your impact. So when you get called out, make sure to listen, apologize, commit to changing your behavior, and move forward. Last, but certainly not least, actually the most important thing on this list is remember that ally is a verb. Saying you're an ally is not enough. You got to do the work. 1 through 4, 1 through 4.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about things that we can all do. This one is called the ACEs framework. And by the way, at the end, we will share both Rabbi Kramer's email and my email. If you want copies of these slides or any of the resources we share with you, we're happy to give them to you because we know we're going through this quickly. So this one is a framework for having those courageous conversations around bias. You know, you get to a family event or just with people that you're starting to see again in person, and all of a sudden something comes up. What do you do? How do you have that courageous conversation where you do stand up for someone and you do assert yourself, but you do it in a way that's respectful and a way that is not shaming or blaming? So the first one is acknowledge without judging. I appreciate that, or I can see that you might be upset about what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. I understand. I completely get what I'm hearing you say. You're acknowledging what they're saying. You're not agreeing to it. You're simply acknowledging it. The second one is clarify and get clarity without interrogation. So often all we need to do is ask people, you know, when you said that, what did you mean? And that's often enough to bring them up short to say, oh, wow, that might not have been what I meant to say, because we don't all have the right language. Language is changing so quickly in this field that often we're afraid to say anything. And if we say something wrong, we don't want to be blamed or shamed for it, especially publicly. So we want to get clarity, and often that clarity will help the person realize they made a mistake. The third step is explore without directing. Tell me more why you feel this way, because you do want to build a bridge. You don't want to just put them down as you've got to be kidding me, you're stupid. How could you say such a thing? You want to build a bridge so that you can bring them forward if possible. So tell me more why you feel this way. How does this concern you? And then step 4 is drive a solution. So would you be willing to consider statements like that, or what does a better solution look like? So you start to move them in the direction that you're looking for. Oops, 1 second. Okay, so there are 2 types. There are 140 documented biases, and typically when we teach classes like these, they're 2 to 4 hours, or they can be a full day. But we wanted to give you a taste of some of the areas of bias and what to do about them. So there are 2 main areas of bias that we're going to mention today. One, it comes from overload, or this notion of moving quickly. And what we can say is, when that happens, when you realize that you're doing it, pause and question. Have I only chosen information that confirms my already existing beliefs? Like, oh, of course they act that way, because I already believe people of a certain category act a certain way. Seek to understand, check your assumptions. You can read the detail here and learn. What information are you avoiding? What are the critical facts you need? What would be the best thing for you to do? Can you make a checklist to be more effective? So this is the first one, around the need for speed. The second one is biases that come from feelings, and those also require the same types of steps. Pause to question it, but the questions are different here. What am I feeling and why? Am I crossing the street to avoid a person because I have fear about them? Where does that fear come from? What am I making up and what is real? Seek to understand. Am I jumping to conclusions? What have I discarded because it didn't fit my beliefs? If someone is in front of you and you're checking out at the supermarket and they have a lot of piercings and tattoos on their face, do you immediately jump to judgment, or is it an emotional response? So seek to understand. Check your assumptions. What are you assuming about a person based on the way they look? And then again, learn. What are the facts, and what other information do you need? Shifting over to some ways to increase empathy and curiosity, because both empathy and curiosity will help balance out these natural tendencies, our need for speed and our emotional response. Empathy and curiosity are going to tamp those down and help us act, instead of out of bias, but out of our highest and best selves, which is what we want. So have empathy. Position yourself. If you see something that's happening, position yourself physically at the same level. Don't talk down to a person if you're standing and they're sitting. Be fully present when you listen. Restate words, identify feelings, withhold your judgment as much as you possibly can. And then be curious. What am I thinking or feeling? What are they thinking or feeling? What biases are surfacing, both positive and negative? Because biases are going to be both on the positive and negative side. And then how could you build a connection? What do you both care about? How am I like this person? What do I respect or like about this person? The more you can build empathy with them, even if it's a person who initially says something that triggers you, or it's a person who you just have no familiarity with, and so you're a little concerned or frightened. Maybe you're concerned that you're going to use the wrong pronouns. Maybe you're concerned that you're going to say something inappropriate. Whatever it is, use some of these things to build your empathy and curiosity. So here's some more tips. Use softening statements. What I'm hearing you say, it seems like, when you said, what did you mean? Create a safe space for people. Reflect before you speak. One of the biggest things I typically share with people is stop the action and give yourself a few minutes to take a break and come back later. Think about it. Think about how you want to respond. In the moment, we may not share the right response. That is that reflection of our best and highest selves, and will bring out the best and highest of the other person. Apologize when you need to. When you are corrected, let people know, I apologize. This is a learning journey for me. Avoid shaming. Even if someone says something that is absolutely inappropriate in your mind. And trust me, I've had many of those said to me or about my daughter when she first came out as a lesbian. People said things that I thought were the most hurtful things. And these were people that I thought were my friends, and they would say things that were just awful. And I had to step back and say, how can I respond that doesn't shame them in the way that they're trying to shame my daughter? And assume good intent, even if it's not there. If you assume positive intent, maybe they're just curious, maybe they're afraid, maybe they're uneducated, then you will respond in a better way. The other thing is, when people talk about oppression, don't dismiss it as needing to get a thicker skin or just looking to be offended. Listen and give space for their experience. Because as we saw earlier, we all come from a different place of privilege. We all have different experiences. And I can't judge what is hurtful to you, and just as you can't judge what is going to hurt me. If you are corrected, and I probably have said this is probably my 4th time, and you heard it in the video, recognize it as being because others think that you're a good person and would do the right thing if you knew what it was. So if someone corrects you, even if they do it clumsily, take it as, okay, thank you for sharing. Thank you for correcting me. I will do my best not to do that again. And again, this notion of making mistakes. So this is one that I use often in the workshops that I do. It's called Inclusive Culture Bingo. I know we don't have time to play it today, but I thought if you want a copy of it, I'm happy to send it to you, or you can take a snapshot. Just, take out your phone, hold it up to the screen and take a picture of it. These are all items that you can do to be more inclusive. And to promote a more equitable and inclusive environment wherever that is, at your work, at your home, at family events, whatever that means. The idea is go to get the whole card filled. Cross them off as you start to do them, print it out, cross them off, start doing more and more of them, make it a contest at your work group. Do whatever you can to start saying, oh, I did another one. Feel good about it, and then keep the momentum going. Back to you, Rabbi Kramer.
So I'm going to ask you to stop sharing the screen because I want to be able to see everyone's face. I think that one of the most beautiful teachings in Judaism is this teaching of that when human beings mint coins, when you're making multiple coins out of a single mold, that each of those coins comes out identical to one another. But when God strikes Adam to make the first human, to make other humans, each one of us comes out of the mold different, beautiful, and unique. And I think that that's a gorgeous lesson that we should all carry with us each day. And one other spiritual practice that I would like us to take a moment to practice tonight, but more importantly, to take throughout our days when we see someone in line at a grocery store or when we see someone else on the street, when our first reaction might be to be weary or to be nervous or to be scared. A Kabbalistic tradition is to look at someone else and imagine that on their forehead it said, Yud, He, Vav, He. And to think about the divine spark that's in every single one of us. Every single one of us has the divine spark within us. So I'm going to ask you to turn on gallery view and to find someone, even if you're not comfortable turning on your camera, if you'll take a moment and find someone on the screen and look at their face and look at their eyes and think to yourself, Yud, He, Vav, He. And just look at that other person that you find on the screen and know that they too are made in the image of God, that they carry with them through all of their strengths and their weaknesses, their imperfections, their flaws, the divine spark. You have the divine spark in you. And everyone that you look at has the divine spark in them. But it's up to us to use these tricks and these tools to make sure that we're treating each and every one at every moment as though they have the divine spark in them. Take a big deep breath in and out. I'm going to thank Marilyn so much for being our expert on this call, the trainer. And thank you to all the people on the DIEB committee at Shomrei Torah for doing this hard work. And I know that Ner Shalom has a committee that's just as dedicated as well. And thank you, Sherry, for being our Zoom guru behind the scenes. And may you enjoy an evening receiving Torah and really wrapping yourself in it and enjoying it.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Stephanie. Thank you so much, Marilyn. This is the beginning of our work, or in our work for all of us in all of the communities that we exist in. So thank you for continuing to push us along on this path up the mountain.
I also want to add my thanks to both of our presenters. That hack, if you will, of imagining Yud Hey Vav Hey on everybody's forehead is one that I will use. It's like, I think it's one that works. It's the magic trick.
Thank you so much, Shari. Thank you so much, Reb Irwin. Good to see you.
Thank you, everyone.